Hello everyone and welcome back to HomeGames. Thanks very much for joining us. It's been a while since we've come together, but it's really lovely to have you all with us. There are a few of you on this call. I can see it's quite busy, which is lovely to see. So I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping, a little bit of chat. I'm joined by a wonderful array of panelists, so I'll tell you who they are, and then we'll get into the chat. I know you're all very keen to kind of get involved in this kind of chat, which is all focused around technology and integration. So we're very pleased that you're all so keen to join us. So just in terms of the illustrious panel that I'm joined with then, so working around my screen, I have Emma Napier from Bravura, Nick Eatock from intelliflo, Tony Vail from Wealth Wizards, and Lena Patel from ISJ Financial Planning. So welcome all, lovely to have you with us. I think people know the drill now for this. They've joined us on enough of these sessions to know how it works. But if you are new to Crowdcast, basically how it works is that there's a chat down the side, which is already very active and good to see, and chat about haggis, which I feel like is far too early in the day for that, but we'll leave that there. So you can join in the chat down the side and ask any questions to the panel or chip in on the conversation as you see fit. And then there's also an ask a question button down the bottom, and that can either mean that you can ask your question privately to me or just away from the main thread if it's getting a bit busy. So that's the order of the day, really. We're going to spend 45 minutes or so just chatting through all the ins and outs of technology and integration, and all the kind of good stuff that kind of spins out from that. So it's quite a big topic, but we'll try our best, and I'll try my best to kind of marshal as best I can. So without further ado then, technology, as I said, is such a huge subject. And I'm going to pick on Lena to start off with as the kind of financial planner in the room, just to kind of talk about your experience with technology as it sort of fits in your business. Is it a kind of help or a hindrance? Does it actually make you more efficient, do you think?
So yeah, I come from a banking background, so where all the system is already set up for you. So when I set my business up, I had to start system from the beginning. So I think it's been a great help in terms of onboarding clients and helping clients to understand the process and the journey they'll be going through. I guess the biggest frustration that we have is integration in terms of a client will come onto a portal we use, input all their data, but then we have to go to another system to send the risk profile questionnaires out, to then look at the asset allocation, the systems that link together. So I think for us moving forward, having something that will give us live valuations that paraplanners, administrators, clients can also have access to in one space would be really helpful, because at the moment IO groups live valuations pretty well, but then the onboarding with cash card doesn't link together. So we're struggling with where does a client find the best place to work. At the moment, have two systems to use, which isn't really good for a client.
Yeah.
In terms of, for me, it's opened up a new way of working, technology and Zoom and COVID. Normally, I was a traditional IFA that would invite clients in, but now I'm able to service more clients across the UK. And also, it helps us to increase the number of clients that we can service as well. So because the streamlining of the system of the fact finds, the annual reviews, it's helped broaden up the advice that we can offer to clients, and it's been a better experience. I think clients, you'll always get clients whether older or younger that are wanting to use technology digitally or not, but so there's not one size that fits all. Everybody's demographic is different, so I think that's really important, to be able to have a process that fits everybody, younger clients or older clients or retiring clients, divorcing clients. So for me, I think I'm embracing technology. I do have my frustrations, and a lot of the time I just think, why am I bothering with this? But I do have some great paraplanners and administrators that can help along the way, which is also great because I didn't want to employ staff, so I can have paraplanners across the country, administrators who can still work with me and come across as if they work with me with clients, but have access to all the systems. But having something, so the paraplanner uses one system, the clients use one system, I use a back office system. We need something. And it's the ideal situation. I guess what we want is something that talks to everything, and it's cost effective for both advisors and clients.
Yeah, it is a bit of a shock to the system, isn't it, when you go from a big company to I haven't got experience of this, but I can only imagine setting up on your own and being like, just being responsible for the printer, let alone getting systems to talk to each other. So Tony, I wanted to bring you in here because you've got a different perspective in terms of Wealth Wizards and the online advice piece you were already doing before kind of the dreaded virus and all of that kind of thing. Do you share some of Lena's frustrations and I guess see similar opportunities, or is it a bit different for your business?
Well, I guess there's a couple of parts to our business. So we have a workplace proposition which is under our own regulated permission. So we are an IFA, and we use that as a sort of route to market. But within our own IFA, we use our Churro platform, and our Churro platform is used by multiple advice businesses, to give a normal face-to-face supporting the sort of more general advice process. So it's really interesting. We've seen, on that side of the business, we've seen quite a as you might expect with the pandemic, quite a big adoption of moving more to using our technology to support that part of the process. And that is as Lena's saying, is you have quite a big change challenge when you've either got nothing or you've got an existing process. But where we can get our system adopted, and it's really focusing on the advice part of the value chain. We're not doing a fulfillment or CRM. We're really looking at that piece of guidance and advice. We're saving about sort of 50-60% of the time to do a complicated case for an advisor, but the advisor is in control of that. We're not trying to make them do that digitally with the client. They can do. And it's interesting. We've got a feature where you can send parts of the fact find to the client directly to complete if you want to. About half the advisors using our system do that, and when they do that, they get about 90% of the information completed. But obviously, it depends whether that suits the advisor and it suits the client, but that's part of the system. So we've seen a big uptake in those kind of features recently. Yeah. But it definitely is integration is something that comes back as an issue. And being able to do the change process to adopt those new systems.
And I guess because you have gone through that process of the pandemic and more people wanting those kinds of services, has that exposed either that integration point or just particular crunch points because there was more demand for the tech?
It's definitely a barrier to adoption, I think, because of the looking at the change process and the target operating model for a business. We tend to look for our piece of the jigsaw, if you like, the advice piece. We tend to try and bring in integrations that make that easier. So, for example, we've got a health questionnaire integrated, annuity quotes integrated, attitude to risk systems integrated. So you don't need to try and solve that part of the problem in your practice to give the advice. That still leaves a CRM integration, still leaves a fulfillment integration, etc. So those are still challenges for adoption, I think.
Okay, great. So yeah, we've said the word integration a fair few times now. If you were playing integration bingo, you've got the full house. So Nick and Emma, I'll bring you in now in terms of that piece, because that's always something that comes up in terms of something that firms want the providers, whether that's kind of platform providers or tech providers, to do better at. But people ask the question a lot, but it's quite hard to get at what the answer really means. And maybe it's quite a difficult challenge to kind of face. So what do you two think about that in terms of where we're at with integration just now and where it needs to get to? I don't know if Nick, you want to start off.
Matt, there's all kinds of different integrations, I guess, is the first point. So there's integrations at a kind of a data layer and a data level where data should be, should transmit from one system, whether it's two software vendors, one to another, or whether it's between platforms and the software vendors. So at that data level, that's important. But also kind of what I heard from Lena there was also around the user experience as well. So that's a form of integration too. And they're trying to get a user experience, whether that user we're talking about is the end client going through a sort of client portal onboarding type journey, or whether it's the advisor or paraplanner more back at the office. Although how many of us are back at the office these days, I don't know, wherever we're sat. doing our work. There's that kind of user experience for those players too. And integration itself used to be done in a really proprietary way in the profession, you know, where two vendors, whether it's a platform and a software player or two software players, would get together and build something kind of bespoke to meet a particular need. And whilst that did a job, the challenges with it was it ended up creating a real legacy of maintenance of all these different bespoke links and integrations, and kind of the advice profession and the software that backs it, in common with the rest of the world and software just very generally horizontally, has actually moved much more to an API approach and making sure that all partners have APIs that allow a better way of facilitating information, but also handovers between those organizations. So I think we've got a better foundation. The challenge now is building on that foundation. So at the moment, for example, so we have a set of APIs, about 270 odd endpoints on our API that third parties can use, and we have a developer hub and a store that allows third parties to build from that. And we get something like 1.5 million API calls a week. So it's definitely used, you know, this stuff is there and data is transmitted and people can jump from one system to another and not have to rekey as much as they did before. I mean, we've got about 94 odd partners who do that. The challenge, I think, now is about getting that integration even deeper for each of those partners. Whilst, yes, we want to add more partners to our store, and we're continuing to do that, we also want to make sure the integrations are as deep as possible. So partly that's on us, you know, partly that's about us extending and expanding those APIs. Sometimes it's on the third party as well in terms of utilizing those APIs. So it kind of feels like together we've got to solve the problem together. Not one party can solve it.
Okay. And Emma, so Nick was talking there about this kind of old world of proprietary tech versus this new world of APIs, whatever they are. Data feeds is my very kind of simplistic analysis of APIs. And what's your take on what Nick is saying there and kind of what integration means to you, I guess, without going a bit too philosophical?
I think there's a few things there. So I think firstly, going back to what Lena said right at the start, that actually we've made some massive strides in the use of technology in both the advisory world and the platform world and the back office and everything talking to each other. We've you know been talking about it for years, but the pandemic, if you want to put it down to that, has really energized the movement of utilizing technology for the right purpose. And I think one of those the purpose of doing it is actually the end customer, because there's always been this great big fear factor around, do we or don't we give our customers access to some of this technology that takes the strain of what we're trying to do from an advice perspective. So I think that's a really good thing that we've done. And then we come back to the point that you just asked about integration. And I think that also, as Nick said, it's a great big huge conversation, because integration, as Nick said, can be lots of different things. You can sew together small things and you can sew together big things, but there's actually a bit of a hard fight as to the who, the how, the what, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, what does it look like, what do we want to deliver, and is that across the board? So there's a big conversation about integration. The point I'd like to make on integration is actually, I think there should be a bit of a question mark about what we integrate together versus what we automate. So I think a number of systems that advisors use, that platforms have within the functionality of the platform software itself, a lot of those things can be automated. So how can we speed up the process to go from A to B in a really cost-effective way, which in your back pocket is your client that you're thinking about, that you're trying to deliver the right thing to. So big, we could do a whole 45 minutes on integration, I'm sure. But for me, it's automation and making the job easier.
Yeah, okay. And so the chat's kind of bringing up some good points here, so I'll try and take them in turn. So Anya talks about kind of tailoring and designing technology either with clients in mind or with clients and planners in mind. So Lena, I think you were touching on this a little bit, but when you're thinking about the tech systems that do have to kind of be used and talk to each other, are you primarily thinking about clients' ease of use and engagement, or are you thinking about your kind of business processes, or I guess maybe one feeds off the other?
Yeah, I think to make the process easier, it's being able to have the client phase. The client's got to be engaged in the system for us to be able to work with them. I think that's the most important thing. So I'll send out a fact find prior to a meeting so that they've got that. So you're not sitting there having to fill out a form. So it does save time, the technology does. They've got the ability to then look at the initial discussion documents. They can have a read through what risk may mean to them. So all those things are in preparation, but then we've got to have a system that builds long term, that helps you review it regularly. The client can dip in and have a look at their valuations and be engaged with their finances. That's the important bit, because if the first touch with it isn't warm and friendly and user friendly, they're just going to be turned off. And I think that's where, for a client's journey, it's all got to be seamless. So they'll come into the website and we'll say, this is your client portal, but then that's only doing some of it, because we're then sending them a link via CashCab, for example, to fill out a fact find, to upload their documents. And then you've got secure messaging on IO, but there's no way of it integrating together. So you're either manually having to re-input the details or choosing one over the other. And they both have got the niceties of it, but it's which one do you choose? And the client facing is the important bit.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So yeah, there is a bit of a conversation to be had around what we mean when we're talking about integration versus automation, and that kind of thing. And Fred was asking earlier, Nick, about you talked about deeper integrations with he's put quote marks. I don't think they're sarcastic quote marks, but he's asking kind of what is deeper integration, and then you've got kind of, yeah, when we're talking about integration, I guess it's systems talking to each other, and how is that different or better than automated processes?
Sure. So I think they're slightly different. So from an integration point, I think it comes back to those two types of integration, both data integration at a data level. So in other words, ensuring that data doesn't have to be rekeyed a number of times, so you get it all there. And then integration at a user experience, a kind of a user journey level. And Lena talked there about the importance of the sort of the client experience in this. And I think, one of the things, one of the good things that the pandemic provided, and there weren't many, let's be honest, but one of the good things it provided was an uptick actually in the amount of interaction between clients and advisors using systems like client portals. We certainly saw a massive jump in that, where clients absolutely looking at their client portals to see updated valuations, filling in fact finds, sending messaging, signing documents, all of that kind of stuff happened in a way that it didn't as much before the pandemic. And since we're not through it all, it's difficult to say how much of that will persist or whether it will continue to grow. At the moment, it's continuing to grow. I suspect we might see something of a leveling off, but hopefully it's just a slightly shallower growth curve rather than actually flattening, because I think it's a good thing. So from our perspective, when we look at that depth of integration, firstly on the data piece, we want our integrated third parties to use more of our APIs to get deeper data back and forth between us. And those API endpoints pretty much support the entire fact find of a client now. So you can actually populate data back and forth with those APIs. That's all possible. And then on the second one, which is the user experience, we've done this with intelliflo Office, and we're now beginning to add it with PFP, and the new version of PFP coming out early this year, is the ability to start integrating some of the user journeys. So the client actually from, let's say, a single client portal can still gain access to user journeys from other third-party systems, all within that environment. So we think that's a pretty important step going forward. Automation is largely about actually systems systems being able to be influenced and kick off processes based on what's happened in other systems, so that they actually can talk together and keep a process going. And there's some basic ones in the industry at the moment. So things like income processing. So for example, we've got integrations with over 30 platforms and providers that fire information to us, which kicks off an automation for income fee reconciliation, which reconciles about 2.6 billion a year automatically, just because of that. You know, that stuff just happens in the background. Valuations is a similar thing, about 500 million valuation updates a year through that process. But that's kind of just the base camp, if you like, about where it needs to be. The next stage is the automation beyond that, between platforms, back office vendors, practice management systems, and others.
Yeah. And Tony, I could see you were nodding away there. What did you want to come in on something there?
No, I just think Nick made a very good point about the two aspects of integration. I think from the user experience integration point of view, it's very interesting. So we've worked very hard to make our Churro platform work both with the self-serve client and with an advised client, and to switch between the two. And you know, we're seeing that putting the advisor in control of that as well, so that they can take a segment of clients if they like and leave them in a digital guidance or advised journey with a sort of robo-advice type proposition, or just a sort of financial wellness proposition that they can segment and offer to some clients. But then with appropriate gateways or triage, they can then take some classic clients into a more normal sort of hybrid journey that's supported by the tech as well. And it's making that, you know, and we all expect it now, don't we, with the sort of digital services we consume otherwise. It's a seamless journey, and your data carries through, and you're known from the journey you started. And I think so many journeys in financial services, you start online and you give them your data, and half an hour later you're giving somebody else the same data. I mean, it's very frustrating.
And I suppose that's the interesting point around kind of, it's not online advice or face-to-face. You're kind of trying to enable that switch between the two. And I think when I've seen the system, there are some quite key signposting things around, do you need help? Do you want to talk to someone? That kind of thing. And I guess that's where the tech piece helps as well. So that's good. So George has kind of decided to kind of ask a slightly controversial question around, we've had the pandemic and we've seen the effects of that in terms of adoption of tech. So maybe clients are now thinking they don't need to see someone in their lounge as maybe it was back in the day, or go into kind of the fancy advisor office. So his kind of suggestion for debate is face-to-face advice in decline at last? What do you think? Has tech got so good now that face-to-face advice is on its way out?
I don't think so. I think it's important for many clients still want to come in. Again, we go back to every client is different and they will have their own preferences. So I will see normally initially a client maybe via Zoom, but they do still want to come in and see someone face-to-face when you're making big life-changing decisions. When you're thinking you're going to retire and my income going to last for the rest of your life. Yes, the screen is great. Yes, the technology is great. But I think they still want to see the whites of your eyes and think, really, do I trust this person? Because it is the know, like, and trust. And I think it's really important. So I'm not saying that's for everybody, but I don't think we're there with technology yet to replace all financial advisors for face-to-face advice. Because I've just opened an office in our local community and I see lots of clients come in and out, and they do want someone to pop into, and still there is still a place for us. And I think that's going to be here for the foreseeable future. I don't think tech is there yet to replace us, hopefully.
I agree.
I'd like us to get to the world where there's more financial advisors and there's more financial coaches, and that everybody, if they want to, can get to see someone. And we're getting to a world where it feels like it's for the privileged few, isn't it? And I think people.
It is. It's a challenge to see someone, and I think a lot of clients that do come are finding it difficult to find someone to see. Either their entry levels for advice are too high, so the minimum investment levels or fees, or so there's a challenge in where we are as to ongoing advice providers and advisors. Right.
Ultimately,
go on, Nick. Sorry.
I was just going to say. So ultimately, the technology there should be there to help scale the advice, so more advice can be given to more people, because Tony's absolutely right. There's not enough potential clients receiving advice there. It's been a problem of the profession for years, and RDR arguably accelerated that. But if the technology is there and used properly, actually what it can do is it can take out some of the time-consuming and challenging elements of the advice process and deliver it in a much easier way for both the client and for the advisor, which then allows the advisor still to provide face-to-face advice for the actual advice bit. That's the building on the trust, building on the relationship, and taking advice visits. And we see this hugely with our e-advisor index, where those firms that actually onboard the whole tech stack actually have many more clients than those firms who don't. So they're utilizing the tech to help them scale their business. And actually, you know what? If the end game of this is that more people receive advice because of tech, then I think it's pretty much done a good thing.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the conversations coming through, I'll try and sweep up a few of these comments because I think they're all on a similar theme. But Gary talked earlier about how the focus needs to be on making the annual planning review process that much more efficient through automation and integration. And I think kind of following on from that, Nathan was talking about this idea of a common industry standard, which is something I think I've heard about before, whereas I think advisors and planners' frustration is just having to constantly go around providers and get information that they need on a regular basis is the thing that drives them absolutely kind of insane. And if there was some sort of common industry standard, whatever that would look like, that would help them massively. And I think the rebuttal to that has been, well, if you're asking platforms that, the sort of theory is, well, that's all well and good, but perhaps we don't want to commercially sensitive information, or we don't want to be seen to be helping our competitors. So Emma, I mean, you're not a platform provider, but you're kind of providing the tech that supports all of this stuff. So what are the kind of things that you're being asked for? Do you think that kind of common industry standard idea could work? What would that look like?
Yeah, no, I think a common industry standard will end up getting to it at some point. But
somebody needs to grasp that nettle, I think, don't they?
Yeah, and I'm sure we get there, and probably not too far down the line. As a technology provider, we do have the facilities to be able to speed up the process. So if we're just talking about annual reviews, we're talking about valuations, we're talking about assets, and how those investments have performed over a year, to be able to play back to the client. There is technology that we have in the form of microservices, for instance, that just do that bit. And that's the exciting bit for me, because we can actually speed up that process, and we can make it really slick, and we can integrate it into anything at any time really quickly and really simply. She says that doesn't really do the sewing in this department, but the concept is there. So there is technology. And there is all different types of technology that do certain individual jobs. So if you're just taking annual reviews, yes, there's a piece of technology that produces super fast, efficient, logical annual review statements. There's MiFID II statements, there's cost and charges statements, and all of those things can be integrated into any platform technology. It doesn't need to necessarily be Bravura. But it's that sort of evolution of technology that we should be able to harness for the good of what we're trying to do here. So whether it's an industry standard that means that we do something, standard across the board, every client gets this, the technology's there. It's not something that we need to create. So for me, let's get going with some of that. Because we can, if you're talking old traditional, insurance companies, which tend, when I was IFA, those were the guys that you needed to sit on the phone for 4 days to try and get a valuation from, and then integrate that into your own process because it didn't all work together. Well, there's no reason why those larger traditional firms can't adopt some of this new technology to be able to speed up an old process. It doesn't have to be an all singing, all dancing, new age platform. It can just be some really dedicated technology that solves one purpose.
Okay.
I think I'm absolutely agree with that. We've got to take the challenge on of making that better. It seems crazy, doesn't it? When you set a client up, why can't you should be able to get any information you like back and be able to, why are we talking about annual reviews? Shouldn't a client be able to review their holdings any time? Really, shouldn't the advisor be able to run a report whenever they want to on a client? The challenge is going to be to get there, isn't it? And we need open data standards, and we need and that's going to be harder than we all hope, I'm sure, but we've got to work on that.
Yeah, and Paul kind of makes the point that perhaps the reason this hasn't got off the ground is because there's a vested interest potentially in the status quo and things not integrating. But from what you're saying, that's not the case. It's in everybody's interest for things to work better. So that's great. So thank you all for that. So what I would like to ask now is, I guess this is a really big conversation and I'm not going to squeeze it into 15 minutes or so, but in terms of like the platform piece for you, Lena, where does that sit in terms of this tech and integration point? Because you've either got things integrating to the back office and or your chosen platforms. And for you, is your platform the kind of centerpiece that holds everything together? Is it your back office? Are you wanting more or less from your platform? What would you say about the role of platforms in your business?
I think it's the back office that's the most important bit for me. Platforms do their bit, but it's only their part in the process. And I think it's important, I think Gary said earlier on about making the process for annual reviews and ongoing conversations with the clients, whether they be biannually or however, just so you can tap into something and all the information be in one place. And there probably isn't any platforms out there can hold everything in one place at the moment anyway. So I have two, because I was a legacy with Intrinsic. So it's difficult to have one system that will be good for the clients and for the user. And I think annual reviews are important so that we can streamline the process to save time to see more clients, because that's the biggest, I suppose, challenge that we have, is that not having to do the same thing every time, and the information is updated regularly, and we're not waiting for the annual reviews. And I don't think there is something at the moment that does that. So we were having a conversation in the Facebook group yesterday about how many clients can you service. Well, if you've got a great system, it opens up how many clients you can see because you've got a process that's followed repeatedly. But at the moment, I don't think there's a process anywhere that somebody has got that integrates everything, talks. So even the integrations, so there's one between cash calc and IO, but then the income, when it's integrated back, doesn't go into the right section, so you've still got to go in there and amend it all. The integrations are there, but they're not at the deeper level that they need to be, so that everything's synchronized without still having some manual input. We're still not there, I don't think, to the levels we need it to be. It's okay saying we have lots of APIs and lots of integrations, but they've got to be good quality, robust stuff that we can use and rely upon, because nothing worse than having something that's not right and then a client seeing that and you're thinking, oh my gosh, it just makes you look inept, I suppose.
Yeah, that's the thing. It all kind of comes back on you. It's your brand on the line, isn't it? Yeah. So Emma, I'm just going to return to this idea of this common standards thing, because there's a question that's come up around just practically, how do you get some of the old legacy providers to sign up to something like industry common standards on making data work better and making systems talk to each other, when I guess the argument would be that some of those people can't manage their own systems effectively, let alone talk to each other.
I think it goes back to what I was talking about a little while ago, and the microservice side of things, because there are, without going into too much, there are microservices that deal with legacy systems across a number of legacy systems, pull it all together, put it in a format that an advisor needs to receive, and poke that back in. I mean, there is technology that we have that does exactly that. Mm-hmm. So I think there's the common industry standard discussion, which is across the board. But I think just picking up on the point of platforms and what platforms can do going forward, I think there's a few things there, because there's there's also that kind of thinking ahead mentality as well. We've had platforms and we've lived with platforms over the last 10, 15 years, and they've existed in the guise that they are, but there's certain platforms that are changing shape now in the industry, and those platforms I think are the platforms of the future. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday or Monday, Fidelity have rebranded their funds network, and they're now Fidelity Advisor Solutions. Now that says to me that they're much more into or trying to tune the old funds network platform into an advisor solution. And not every advisor business is the same. So Lena's business, for instance, might want a certain service from their platform, and then there's also lots of M&A going on at the moment. A larger practice or a different might want something else. So I think when we come back to those common standards, there's also the question, common standards can mean one thing to one person and something else to another. And I think the platforms can change using, again, microservices or just future developments to be able to think ahead. And what do I need to look like? How can I be more efficient? How can I really create value for my users in my advisors that they can then deliver to their clients? And there's so much that they can do. That I think that's where they should be looking for the future, the agility and the expertise that they've got.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So Richard asks, just jumping around a bit now. So bear with me, but I suppose this is one for Nick and Tony, really, around are there lessons that can be learned, do you think, from the tech developments that we've seen in D2C or disruptors either in or outside of the UK? And his point is there seems to be a very different pace of change in terms of the rate that the D2C models operate at and advance and progress at versus where we are in the advice and wider financial services world.
Certainly from our point of view, having got a direct-to-consumer a part of our platform and having sort of, we've had that live for over 7 years in the workplace. So we've learned a heck of a lot in doing that about the user experience that's needed, about the behavioral prompts that you need to get people to come back to something that is, for some people relatively, low interest or low engagement. So I think that there's been a massive amount for us. There's been a massive amount of benefit in having that part of our proposition that we can take into, designing the hybrid multi-channel journeys that we then offer to advisory firms to support. And I think that without having that learning of and it's becoming hygiene, isn't it, in many parts of the economy, just having a great user experience, and you've always got to remember that people spend 99% of their time in other apps. They're using Amazon, they're using Netflix, they're using whatever, so you've got to design your app to be boringly usable, and the same goes for advisor tech, and I in years gone by, I've used tech, you need to be trained on it for weeks to understand it. We've got to take all that learning. I think, and the question is a good one, because I think there's a lot of learning we can take from those user experience successes into the whole ecosystem.
I agree, Tony, in terms of the robos and the D2C capability. I think the great legacy that they will deliver, because they, by and large, they haven't delivered huge assets or in any respect. But what the great legacy they have done is provided an understanding of the experiences and the how you engage with your clients into the advised process, and that's where they will support the hybrid world that we're emerging. And frankly, we've been all talking about hybrid over the last 2 years, because that's exactly what pretty much every advisor has been doing. They've been engaging with their clients remotely and using technology to do that. And some of it can be as boring as a Zoom call or something like that, which is, I guess, relatively low tech, but still has only come about in the last few years. And some of it can actually be about client experience of going through, filling in information, completing documents, doing that side. There was a great piece of research about 4 or 5 years, and I'm struggling to remember who it's from, but it essentially identified three parts of the experience with a client from an advisor's perspective. And there's the fact finding process, there's the advice process, and then there's the implementation process. So that three-stage journey, if you like, and that simplifies it a bit, but it gives you the three broad categories. And clients in the main love the advice bit of the experience. You know, they absolutely love that. And most of it was delivered face-to-face, and it was delivered through a relationship they have with their advisor, which culminates in providing something of interest to me about how I can meet my hopes, dreams, and aspirations going forward, and that's great. But the fact-finding bit at the beginning wasn't great. I think that's improved with client portals now. I think it's massively improved. We see huge adoption there actually across fact-finding for onboarding clients and so on. And then also the implementation bit at the end, and that's the bit where, to Emma's point, you know, that better interaction with platforms and providers absolutely is possible. And as I say, I think that can be both at the data level, and to Emma's point, microservices, micro front ends can also deliver a user experience level. We just need to kick on to that stage, and advisors need to adopt that stuff as well. So we continue investing in those areas that they're using, and then everything I think can move at a good pace.
Okay, thank you. And Lena, kind of as I start to kind of bring things to a close, I kind of wanted just to come back to you in terms of we've covered quite a bit of ground, and I still kind of feel like we've only scratched the surface in terms of all the various different like places this conversation could go in terms of technology and integration. But is there sort of an expectation, do you think, of advisors and planners and the teams that work with them, that they suddenly now have to be, as well as all the other stuff they're doing, seeing clients and managing relationships and running their business, they also have to be suddenly technology experts and know all the ins and outs of every system? Do you kind of feel that that's something that's expected of you, and is that fair, I guess?
I think that's the choice you make when you decide to run your own business. I think, yes, I think you have to embrace technology, because without it, you can't do it. So that's the first, isn't it? I'm directly authorised on my own. So I think, yes, you have to embrace technology, and it's really supported me to help streamline my processes. So Gabriel is so much easier when you've got a back office system, and it takes you probably half an hour, 45 minutes to just run off a report if it's done correctly from the beginning. So technology does help along, and it's helping us to evolve the business and reach out and see more people. But yeah, you do have to be some form of tech, because otherwise paper-based it's very difficult. I mean, I hardly have any posts anymore into the office. It's all scanned, administrators across the UK. So you have to embrace it if you want to at least service X number of clients that you want to deal with. And that's a choice you make when you set up a business and you decide this is the route you want to go down.
Yeah. And when you are perhaps tearing your hair out at, why isn't this system talking to another, or why isn't this working? What do? Do you just kind of approach your networks for that, or is it just something you have to
sweet gin and tonic, and I sit there with my gin and tonic and drown for a bit and then come back up? And there's lots of people that you can turn to. The support services for the back office systems are really good, I must say. You can put a call in. To the end of the day, there is a solution. Sometimes it's just stepping away. Being on your own in a business is difficult, I think, at times. So it's just nice to have the support of the systems that we do have, because they have the back office systems that they need to support your queries, and they do. I've found with the ones that I use have been quite good and very supportive quite quickly as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, we need tech that's, I don't know, less or more enabled by gin and tonic, I don't know. And then for the other panelists then, if there are advisors struggling with kind of questions around the systems that they're using, or kind of as part of their, not platform due diligence necessarily, but wider due diligence in terms of systems that they're using, what's your kind of advice to firms in wading through all of that and making sure they get the system that's kind of best fit for them and their clients and their business, would you say?
I think for me, it's starting with what you were saying at the end there. It's about understanding what you're trying to achieve as a business, who your target clients are, and then choosing a tech operating model that's fit for that purpose, and challenge the providers to say, well, show me the evidence that this works. I mean, it's all very well you've got a lovely website, super duper lovely website, but where's the evidence? Can I talk to someone else who's using this kit? How are they using it? How are they not using it? You know, we find that very useful. If we could show an advisor, another firm, how they're using it, what benefits they're getting out of it, and you know that's. You know, and at the end of the day, if tech isn't right for you, you know, we should, you know, the technology provider should say, you know, it's really designed for these kind of businesses operating this way, and it might not be right for you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Paul makes the point about we're all on a journey to becoming tech businesses offering financial planning. So maybe the scale will go completely other way.
Well, I think it's, you know, it's really unfair to ask, you know, advisory businesses, you know, if that's what they want to do, should be focused on their clients and advising. They shouldn't have to learn, you know, they should be using tech that's intuitive, easy to use, and integrates. You know, I know we're not there yet, but that's, you know, they shouldn't be trying to, oh God, I'm trying to plug these 37 things together and, you know, and write some of my own code to make this work.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Emma and Nick, are there any other kind of closing pearls of wisdom you would have in terms of like wading through the tech? I don't know if nightmare is too strong.
I was just going to react to an answer that Tony just gave, actually, about advisors, you know, don't need to be tech businesses. They just want to be able to use the technology and do the advice bit. But there's also the argument that advisor firms are changing as well. And some really do want to do the tech themselves. And I don't mean, you know, roll their sleeves up and sew things together and create new things, but actually some of these businesses that I've spoken to over the years and continue to do so, they actually want to start creating different types of propositions themselves. So it's not necessarily that they want to own and control the technology, but they do want to have some influence over what their client proposition looks like. And I think that's where it's the engagement, the due diligence, and what they want to be as a business is really crucial. And I think there's enough people striving forward for different types of propositions, whether that's platforms, whether it's technology or whatever. It is brilliant because that facility is there.
I totally agree with that, by the way. I mean, I think it's about being configurable. You know, so I don't want a small advice firm having to, you know, get two QAs and a development team to configure the tech to give a differentiated proposition. They should get, you know, Intelligent Office or our Chiro platform or whatever it is out of the box and make it work for their practice, with their branding, with their funds, with their proposition, with their way of engaging the client.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Nick, one final thought from you?
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. They shouldn't need to be writing a single line of code. That isn't something you want a financial planning or advice business to have to do. I think that there's a lady in the US called Trisha Rothschild, and Trisha was the ex-chief product officer at Morningstar. I think she'd moved on since then, but when she was at Morningstar, I think she summarized it really well. And it kind of relates to the question earlier about robo. She said, you know, technology won't replace advisors, but advisors who use technology will. Mm-hmm. So technology is an essential part of actually how advice businesses run, and it's becoming even more important. So make sure you choose your systems to do that can do what you want to do, but also have a look at the art of the possible. So when you're looking at solutions, because you'll come across some stuff that maybe you hadn't thought of that you can think, oh, that could be good for our business. Absolutely challenge the vendor to provide evidence, again, to Tony's point, that actually that is adopted. Lots of firms have adopted that. They've shown it's worked. They've shown these are the benefits from it. And then you're following the footsteps that others have made before, and that's more likely to create benefit.
Great, thank you. As Nathan says, if you need a manual, you haven't built it right, that kind of thing. So thank you very much. I'm going to bring it to a close there. Thank you so much. I think we could go on for another hour probably, but we've all got lunches to have. But thank you so much to all of our panelists for giving up your time, to everyone who kind of chipped in on the chat and for joining us. We'll be back around this time next month with a different topic. But until then, thanks very much to you, the audience, to you, the panelists who I'm looking at, and see you all again soon. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks all.
Bye.